Hello,
Yeah, totally.
and welcome to Print Island and to the Lighthouse. My name is Richard Askam. I am the host of today's conversation. I'm the lighthouse keeper, if you like. I think I live at the top of the lighthouse, which gives me the best view across the island and across the industry. And I'm very fortunate to be able to invite along some great friends, some old colleagues, to join me in the Lighthouse. And today is no exception. When I say he's an old colleague, I don't mean he's old. I just mean he's an old colleague. So I'll clear that one up from the start. But Peter van Teeseling is my guest today. Peter and I have known each other for getting on for 10 years now, I think, since I first strayed into the world of what I thought was a hip-hop ice cream shop, Dscoop, but it turned out to be a little bit more than that. So, Peter, welcome to the Lighthouse.
You're Richard, and yes, Dscoop isn't maybe not the hip hop ice cream shop, but it's definitely the hip hop printer place. Maybe to go.
Okay, I see what you did there. That's that. We'll add that to the branding portfolio for next year. That's no problem.
Yeah, definitely.
And for those of you, and I'm sure there isn't anybody in the world that doesn't know who Peter is, but if there is anybody out there who has never heard from Peter before, give us the 30-second elevator pitch of who the hell you are.
Who the hell I am? Well, I'm Peter. I'm Dutch. I'm the executive director of Dscoop, which we just identified as the hip hop printer place to be. But in reality, it is the 20-year young global community of HP digital print users, suppliers, influencers, stakeholders, and it organizes events, online activities, and it's mostly a very active network of like-minded people and addressing the challenges that are ahead of us.
And that's kind of what I'm trying to get to with Print Island, Peter, is to bring everybody together in the way that you have done so brilliantly with Dscoop over the last 20 years, to have these sort of conversations, to have the as it really is, what's going on in the world, not the sort of schmoozy marketing fluff that we're sold, which is fine and it has its place, but there is always a reality. And you and I both know that those conversations happen at the bar at the end of the day, or in the hotel lounge, or in the airport departure lounge in most cases. So here we are in 20, and we'll go backwards in a second. But right now, a little snapshot from where you sit. What do you see as the main challenges coming towards the end of 2025? It's been an interesting year. It's been a difficult year. Headwinds coming from all directions, if that's possible. What's your sort of almost annual roundup of 2025?
Yeah, obviously changing winds. In the lighthouse context, the wind is blowing from all directions. I think, it's the main things that I see within our membership and conversations that we have, obviously, is the whole economy, the tariffs, the complication that brings with just supplies and all the other things, making border crossings more complicated, which clearly I'm in the Netherlands, small country. That poses an immediate challenge. You're in the UK, you're seeing it as well, shipping to mainland Europe. So that's one. Clearly the maturity of AI and how it's impacting what we do and how we do it. But I'm also seeing people in the industry becoming more, better at storytelling and articulating what it is that our industry does and how important it is. And I think last but not least is the realization that talent doesn't come by itself in our industry. We talk about next gen and younger talent. That we actually have to work harder for it, I think, in our industry compared to maybe others, because you have a lot of perception out there that it's a dirty, old guy industry, and I think we're seeing a transition that we should all take responsibility for and drive forward.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think one of the things that I'm hearing consistently through these conversations that I've been having is that the world clearly has changed in many ways, but I think in the fundamental way for the print industry, and particularly the print on demand side of the print industry, is the change from supply and demand to demand and supply. And the generation, the new, whatever it is, I lose track of Gen Z, millennials, I don't know, young people, let's call them, are driving that demand because technology AI, generative AI, smartphones, digital, the whole world that has changed in the 20 years since Dscoop has been around. And it's not quite 20 years, by the way, since the iPhone was invented. So this is a very small period of our world history, but everything's changed in that time. And you must see this, and we'll go back to the beginning of Dscoop in a second, but you must see this today, how much different the demands are on printers than they were 20 years ago.
Yes, I think demands are different, but also opportunities are different, right? So
Sure,
it's just a matter of how you approach it. Is your glass half empty or half full? I tend to believe and experience that, the Dscoop audience or the Dscoop participants have the more optimistic view on what can be done, and I think that's because of also the ability to not operate in a silo, right? That isolated thinking is pretty challenging, I think, for many, and going at it alone. And this is how it started 20 years ago, right? They said we don't want to go this alone. We are not going alone. It's not just the printers, but it was with the suppliers and in this case with HP. Which is the best way to go forward. So, yeah, I mean, the comfort in all areas of the business, but also in how individuals develop themselves. I think that having that comfort level of being able to reach out to anyone within a network, the 6 degrees of separation has definitely become maybe 1 or 2. And we see that more and more, whether that is, collaborating on projects, which is the business reason number 1, but also seeing it much more in the leadership space of, okay, how do I lead my team? How do I manage the culture of my organization? How do I deal with adversity or setbacks? And you see an initiative like Sheet for Brains being very well received and also considered very timely in that space. So.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I've got the Sheet for Brains guys joining me in the Lighthouse. I'm going to have to make some room.
Okay.
I usually only have 1 guest in the Lighthouse, but there's 4 of them coming. Yeah. So that's fine.
Dear.
But yeah, exactly. So, but let's go back then 20 years when you and I both had considerably more hair, and it wasn't growing out of our noses. Okay, fair enough. Just me then. It wasn't just growing out of our noses and our ears and our asses, but actually, no. 20 years ago, the start of Dscoop. The founding and the fundamental logic and reasons behind it, and you've just touched on it there a little bit. And I think the word that always struck me and still does to this day is collaboration. And it's always, I don't come from the print industry, as you know, although I've sort of spent a lot of time in the labeling side of the world from the drinks business perspective. So I came from an industry that wasn't particularly collaborative, and was very competitive and was very keep everything to yourself and what have you, very historical. Wandered into the print industry, for me 10 years ago, but for you 20 years ago, and found a willingness amongst global businesses to collaborate. And I guess that was the founding fundamental principle of Dscoop, was it?
Yes, I think it was coming. If I get the stories, if I hear those stories from what it was like 20 years ago, again, a lot of adversity as well, right? I think the founding statement, or a statement that we use as well to reference the beginning of Dscoop, is from Jack Lacken, one of our founders, who still comes to all our events. I was texting with him yesterday about an event we have in Italy next week, and he's like, "Hey, should I go?" And we chat about it. But that statement was really about that it's a tough industry, it's a tough business. It is not easy to sort of make it, right, in that case. And the consensus was by, as he literally said, pooling resources, right? So you think about the resource that an individual printer has, you think about the resource that an individual supplier has, you think about the resources that in this case HP had. All 3 priorities and interests aligned essentially, and said, okay, if we pool our resources, then we can really, establish this cooperative. And digital printing was early days, right? I mean, you just said it, the iPhone is less than 20 years old. Yeah. It came 2 or 3 years after. And it was really about developing the technology and developing, the the demand and the supply and the applications, and you see all these cycles over that 20-year history. And so they have the development of HP's digital print technologies is very much sort of in sync with the evolution of Dscoop and what the priorities were over time. But yeah, it was a very bold step. I mean, I remember talking to some of the people that were involved in the early days, because it's our 20th anniversary this year, and saying about Jack Lacan that he was the first so-called defector of an end user that went towards HP and said, okay, how do we fix this? How do we solve this? This challenge of, us needing better technology, you needing better usage, right, and suppliers needing better integrations. Someone said at that point that when he did that, he had a target on his back in those early days, because it took a lot of guts and effort and faith in that sense, in saying this is what he then said. He was asked, you have a target on your back, why are you doing this? And he said, it's because it's the right thing to do. It is the right thing for my business. It is the right thing for our partners. It is the right thing for HP. It's the right thing for this technology to do those things. And it's still, we have an award now for doing the right thing. And that even now, 20 years later, that is still, like, for me in the work that I do, is fortunately leading the organization, or the what our board members do, or my team does, or attendees do. You always try and do the right thing. You choose the right thing at the time. And yeah, that takes, sometimes you make mistakes, but mistakes are there to be made, and you can learn from those.
Well, absolutely.
But it's that doing the right thing, which I think is it still applies today, right? So you have a choice of doing two different things. Well, what's the right thing you want to do?
Always. And there's that lovely old expression, isn't it, that if you're not making mistakes, then you're not making decisions. And I think that, and Jack is a great example of that. I've been privileged to meet him a couple of times at various events. I was pretty sure he's about 150 years old by now. He must be, but
he's not. No.
Okay, maybe I won't mention that again then. But I think that bravery, which is what drives change. Everybody talks that innovation drives change, and of course it plays a part in it. But you need somebody to make the first step. And in all situations, and whether that's business, life, the universe, whatever it is, somebody needs to lean in. And I think it's one of the things that struck me in the length of time that I've known the Dscoop organization, which is coming up for 10 years, it's always struck me that willingness to lean in. And, I think it's unique, actually. I don't think I've come across any other industries that allows competitors, if you like, to talk to each other freely and openly and helpfully. The only one I can think of, actually, Peter, and you'll appreciate this as a Dutchman, is the flower industry, because Interflora, one of the world's largest floristry businesses, was founded on the principle of a guy on the east coast of the US and a guy on the west coast realized that their flowers would be dead by the time they'd sent them across the country. So they got together and did each other's orders in that area. And I think there's only that sort of industry that I've seen that willingness to collaborate. Is it still that? 20 years on, do you still get that feeling? I mean, it's always quite hard to maintain an innovation, but clearly that sort of principle, that guiding principle that Jack brought to the party 20 years ago, still there?
Yes, very much so. And I think it's interesting to see that it's just passed on generation. We see it in the students that engage with us. We see it with people that are starting their business, that are in the early stage of their business, or wanting to pivot or do different things. And it's just this network that they can lean into. And I think it's a constant where even Jack, knowing that he's been around the block for a bit, right? He's still very curious and very eager to learn, and not arrogant and thinking, oh, I know everything and that's it. And I think that's the second part, is that the people that engage actively within the community are the ones that sort of know that being in isolation doesn't help you, right? Meaning, if you are connected, then you don't have to. I tend to use this gesture, right? So where you would be eating like this, and you're like, "Don't touch my food."
Yeah.
And I think now it's more about sharing dishes, right? If you go out for dinner, it's the sharing concept is much more
The
popular,
sharing
and I think
plates.
it's
Yeah,
much more
yeah,
it's much more enjoyable.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think the same is in business. People still run their own businesses, but they tend to like connect with each other, share, and well, can be a small thing, it can be a big thing. But a little anecdote, what I think exemplifies that is that having the privilege of traveling for my work and visiting other sites, the the amount of connection that happens when two people from the same industry, one is they open their doors to each other, which is great. It doesn't happen a lot, right? But second is how they can talk about very little things. They can talk about how they move an order from one place to the other, or how they handle their order sheet, or what's the sequence of how they do things. And I think the willingness that they talk about it and the confidence that they have is that they bring their unique insights, their unique experience, their unique thought pattern to it. That makes it exceptional, right? That makes it unique, and it's clearly tied to the individual. And I think that's the other part, is the industry is really more about the people, and technology is great, right? I see it as well with, it works, so it allows them to take that creativity to another level, and but the human aspect, I think, is critical in this case.
I think you're dead right, and actually, it's quite interesting to think about it from opening your house up to guests and visitors and what have you, and sharing food and what have you. It's that human trait of sharing, which I think is probably the key to that collaborative behavior, certainly across the print industry. I'm sure there's others. I'm being very, very generalistic in terms of other industries, but I know a little bit more about this one. You know an awful lot more, but I do remember back in my father's days in the wine industry in the UK, people always came to stay at our house. So yes, they were doing business together, but they didn't do business until the next day. On the first day, they did human. We hear a lot about B2B and D2C and DTF and what have you. And somebody said to me, "What about H2H, human to
Yeah.
human?" And that's the bit that I think is probably the most key part. And those small things that you mentioned there comes from a sense of pride. I love watching printers say, "Oh, let me show you what I can do." And
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can
yeah,
see
yeah, yeah.
the personal pride that they have in the inception and the innovation and the creation of new little things. Then they go, "Have it, take it." It's an idea, not just my idea. And
Yeah.
I love that. It's a very open world, isn't it?
Yes, it's very open, and yeah, if I see that happening, I mean, that's where you get a smile on your face, right? You think, okay, there's two people that get it.
Yeah.
Another anecdote was, we did our conference in May in Long Beach, and there was an entrepreneur. She came for the first time. She had her goal set. She was really knew what she was going to do and what she wanted to get out of it. And but went all in, and really with an open mind, and said, okay, here's the three things I need to achieve across these 3 days. But I'm all in. And she got everything done more or less on the first day. So day 2 and 3 were bonus, but she met, in this case, then John Bailey as an example, right?
Right. Yeah.
They are, an ocean apart. She just was on vacation in the UK and said, "Oh, can I come and visit?" And John's like, "Well, sure, come by." But she spent 2.5 hours driving across the country to go to Sheffield to visit the site. Had a 2.5, 3 hour tour and conversation, and learned a lot of things from each other. This was the second time they met face to face.
Okay.
And then she drove 2.5 hours back to where her family was staying for vacation. So that's like a clear sign, I think, of dedication and commitment that people have. Okay, I have an opportunity to do this. No, I really want to do this. And then someone that says, "Oh, sure, the door is open. Come by." And we see that it's not just sort of between the US and UK, which is maybe similarly culturally, but we see it across Latin America. We see it in Asia. It's the dynamics are entirely different, but that spirit of, I'm smart, but I'm not the smartest person in the room. I can learn from anyone else. That is just unique. In Asia, like within 10 minutes, we had an event visiting PSPs, opening their doors, talking about how they do things, showing what they were doing, right? Talking about the big things, little things. then all gathering for dinner, and within 10 minutes there was a bunch of printers grabbing the microphone and firing up the karaoke. So it's that human to human is just, yeah, that I think that's quite unique on what it does, because it not only helps the industry and the businesses and the technology, but it also helps the individuals to become, better leaders and better storytellers, and, bring in
Absolutely.
culture in organizations and create opportunities for lots of different people, where there is someone that used to be the delivery driver and now operates, a very sophisticated manufacturing facility. So all these things tie into that core human
Agreed.
ability to connect and to focus on that.
And I'm unsurprised that printers grabbed a karaoke. That doesn't shock me for a second, sadly.
Yes. No.
So let's look forward a bit then, Peter, into next year. Is next year 20 years, or is this the 20th year, and therefore next year?
No, this is 20 years. So 2005 was the foundation of 20 years. It's the when we were officially registered, even. So.
Okay. So next year's your 21st then. So that's another landmark. What's the plans? What have you got up your sleeve for next year?
Well, I mean, as our community continues to grow, we always have to think about and innovate with regards to how do we connect members with each other. So we've come up with different ways. We continue to do the things that work really well. So in-person events are here to stay. We're bringing the Big Edge event back to Europe for the first time since 2019, pre-COVID. So we'll be gathering June 10 to 12 in Slovenia, in Ljubljana, which is a beautiful place in Europe. It is wedged between the Austrian Alps, Italian Alps, Croatian countryside, and the Adriatic.
Yeah, so
beautiful place, great food, great wine, and obviously great people will be there. Before that, in March, we'll convene again in the Dscoop famous Gaylord Resort and Convention Center in this case the Rockies, so it'll be Colorado. 10 minutes from Denver Airport. We were there in 2022, right after COVID, and so now we're going back there, which is always popular demand from our members. And then on top of that, we have we've done a series of successful what we call summits, so 2-3 day events, smaller groups but more focused. So we did one in Bangkok, we did one in Medellin, Colombia, and we'll be doing one in Italy next week, and then next year we'll bring those series as well back into the communities. And on top of all of that is our online engagement. We publish a lot of stories from our members. We help them tell their stories. As I said, from a delivery driver to becoming the press operator, or to someone very passionate about sustainability, about people culture, innovating technologies, labels, packaging, flexible packaging, almost anything goes. And that will again be about 30 to 40 online sessions, and a couple of hundred pieces of content that our members can sort of enjoy. And I think the big thing for us to focus on is, like you have this as well, that you explained with your father, right? Friends are coming over the day before, and then after they do business. There is this sense of intimacy and really trusted that space that you have, which isn't necessarily scalable across 1,000 people. But if you have 50 groups of 20, then suddenly those things become scalable. So our big push will be, and our technology, the platform that we operate, has its capabilities to build more peer group like concepts, but then hyper focused on specific topics. We ran a trial event together with HP earlier this year for print on demand PSPs. And so again, as you mentioned earlier, it's a very popular space. Here were the top 10 competitive factories across the US. They got together, and they're off, right? I mean, they are talking to each other, they're sharing how they're doing things. At the end, okay, what's next? One said, hey, raise their hand, come to my facility in a couple of months, right? So that's how that trust builds, and that's, I think, how we see those circles of trust expand. And again, remove not remove the isolated out of the thinking, but really lower barriers for people to make connections easier. And whether that's across borders or across technologies, but this is where we see the future of this community growing. I mean, we are 23,000 users today, which is a lot. So, and we want to obviously want to continue to see more people engage, because, we see people very successful once they engage, but we want to create more opportunities for that. And then the other one is talent, right? So how do we get more people engaged with the industry? So we launched a grants program this year together with HP, which will go live in a couple of weeks. And the purpose of that is to enable students to, travel for internships, travel to our events, but really get much more exposed to our members and have better opportunities there. And then obviously next stage between students and sort of owners, you've got sort of the next generation, which is up and coming, right? So the sons and daughters of the current owners. So what's the future of that business? How do they, pass on their legacy, and how do we encourage the next generation to take charge? There's a lot of activity there, where actually owners bring their next gen to our events or bring them into our community.
I think, and the key for me with the student, the next generation, full stop, is to let them understand that effectively the print industry is now the tech industry. It just doesn't know it, and
Yes.
And in many ways, if you sort of pitch, or flip the script is the words that I always love to use, and if you change that in the perception of the minds of the next generation, then they're not coming into, oh, my dad's a printer. It's actually my dad's in tech. That sounds way sexier to a younger generation.
Yes. Yes. It's funny. I mean, you mentioned like you've been with us for about 10 years. I remember we did an event in Europe in 2016, and we had French journalists come there, French industry press. And I think that was probably one of the headlines that I'm still quite keen or proud of, at least, and say, oh, that was pretty cool. It basically stated that Dscoop brings, makes the industry sexy again.
Okay.
And again, so that was 10 years ago. Well, we still have a way to go.
Well,
but I agree with your statement. It is the tech and it's the people that make it super appealing, and also I think expanding that envelope a bit, as you talked about printing on demand. Okay, there's now all these platforms that are these aggregators and that are working closely with our members and with printers. Okay, how do we engage them better? How do we provide better service for them? And so we're extending that envelope, I think, of the reach of
and I guess if you do one of these analyses that business consultants tend to do about the total accessible market, if you look at the size of the total accessible market for print on demand products, because it's such a plethora now of products, there's and you look at the number of printers that are sort of enabling that rather than waiting for the phone to ring. It's changed the game completely. So the size of that market dictates the size of the opportunity. And if those guys in that world get their heads together, they can have it all. You mentioned John Bailey, and I had him on Print Island a few weeks back. And I said, have you had a nice summer? He went, no, it's been really busy, because people lying on their sun loungers now are ordering stuff on their phone, and somebody's got to do it for them. So that's what I mean about demand and supply. The opportunities are endless, aren't they?
Yes, and I think that's now breaking into new markets, right? So I think packaging is still very much on this, let's say, uncharted territory in the print on demand space.
Yep.
But I think it's accelerating now into those spaces. You see marketplaces coming up that are facilitating that on the design piece, because it's more complicated than sort of a 2D design, getting that onto a product. And you see businesses are gearing up for that and opening up. So where sort of commercial printers were initially looking at label and packaging printers as being much more profitable, then having print on demand as a base and expanding their footprint. I think now the labels and packaging printers are also looking at now what the commercials and print on demands are doing. Hey, how can we learn from that from digital? And so for labels and packaging. And so there's converters that are now, starting to lean into that space, and then you see those synergies again. So there is a whole new dynamic that's starting, which I I find it fascinating, and certainly again in the Dscoop space where it's bringing all those minds together and seeing what can come out of it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the one thing I love about the Dscoop events is bringing those minds together, because not only do they do karaoke and bad dad dancing at the party, which I have seen, they bring a culture of collaboration that I think is quite unique in this world. And it's been a pleasure for me to be a little bit of a part of that. And I'm sure for you, a huge part of that and huge part of your working life, really, over the last 20 years.
Yep.
So, yeah, there we
Yeah.
go. So we march on into 2026, Peter, with the what is it, the hip hop print shop? I think we'll go with that, bringing
Yep.
sexy back
Yep.
for all printers. But it's been a pleasure to see you, to have you up in the Lighthouse here on Print Island. Thank you for joining me today, and I very much look forward to bumping into you somewhere on the road next year.
Thank you for having me, Richard. It was really enjoyable. So 2 thumbs up for the Lighthouse. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Peter. Take care.
Good luck. Bye-bye.